And how are you folks today? Hope all is going well with assignments, with forums, tests and quizzes. If you have any question on any of these, be sure to let me know. Our theorist for today is an individual by the name of Carl Jung, born in 1875, passed away in 1961. For all practical purposes, this is my focus on this, I'm going to call him the theorist of opposites. Now, think about this just a little bit before we go on. We have opposites such as night and day. And the purpose in an individual's life, in working with an individual, is to bring those two together in a type of congruent manner. We might say we have evil and good in some way in our life, bring those two together. I'm just adding these, and these are certainly arguably, could be arguably incorrect. That's all. But at least this is a focus, is to bring together that which is incongruent, doesn't agree with what's happening in our environment, and congruent, that is happening in our environment and is good. Carl Jung is probably one of the most important theorists. He certainly is very complex, as you will see as we go through this. It'll take a little bit additional reading to understand him and what he's saying. But what he wants to do, and he's very, like I say, very controversial. What he wants to do is to foster a dialogue between the conscious, which can be considered self, and the unconscious. Now, what is interesting with Carl Jung is that the unconscious is divided into two parts, which we will be discussing in a little bit. Now, this is the unconscious. One is the personal unconscious, which we can recall. Number two, get my number two here. Number two is the collective unconscious, and this is somewhat called the inherited psyche. This is material that we have a disposition to, such as knowing who a mother figure is, a father figure, a trickster, a hero, and then of course we have self, which is all encompassing. Carl Jung also was being groomed to take the place of Freud. He made trips to the United States with Freud, lectured with Freud, so he was being groomed for that. Nonetheless, he had a falling out with Freud, and in your readings you can probably discover some of the concerns that he had. We have what we call individuation, and again, this is the connection between ego, and he didn't place the emphasis on ego that Freud did, and self. Ego, Jung considered the center of consciousness, and self, S-E-L-F, self, he considered the total psyche. Now, I just stated a little bit ago that we have a conscience, which the ego is the center of, and we have the unconscious, and the unconscious is divided into two parts, personal and collective unconscious. In the theory of opposites, he developed introversion and extroversion, or the concept of them, or further developed them. And if you have ever talked to an individual, or if you are aware of an introvert and an extrovert, an introvert supposedly is outgoing. Matter of fact, they are outgoing. They need people around. Introvert is somewhat withdrawn. And this isn't always true. If you can imagine it this way, let's say that we all have a battery inside of us. Now we know what happens when a battery starts to run down. We either replace it or we recharge it. Well, in this instance, the battery can run down, and what we are going to do, we're going to recharge that battery. Now, an extrovert recharges his or her battery by being with other individuals. An introvert charges his or her battery by being with self or a selected few. Now, in addition to this, we have the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory or Assessment. We'll be focusing on that a little bit in a separate entity. And from this, what we're going to be doing, we're not only be going to looking at the introvert and the extrovert, but the sensing individual, the thinking individual, the feeling individual, the judging individual, and the perceiving individual. Some quotes from Carl Jung. There are as many nights as days. Again, opposite. One is just as long as the other. And what we would do is balance this by working this into our life. There's also happiness, and happiness would not have any meaning if we were not related to sadness. So we balance these two. Another meaning, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So true. Some theorists even claim that those things that we do not care for in other individuals are the same things that we have in our own life. We don't care for them in our own life, so that's why we may not care for the other individual. We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Pretty good statement here. Pretty good statement. So often we are visiting with individuals that condemn for whatever reason the action of others, but this does not liberate, it oppresses it. This quote really isn't from Carl Jung, but I think that it kind of goes along with the feeling, with the pattern of Carl Jung, and that is that grief is the price we pay for love. In other words, in order to really understand love, we must experience grief. And then that shows us how much we love an object and what we think of an object when we no longer have that particular object. Going down here, as I stated, Carl Jung is the theorist of opposites. We have some symbols. He did a lot of work with symbols, the yin and the yang, and also the mandala. His father was a minister. His mother was into mysticism and into the occult. And this could be where Carl Jung came up with some of his occultish type ideas and dabbling into mysticism, which he did. Supposedly, he was sexually assaulted when he was 18 years of age by an older man, and this could explain his attraction for an older man, which could relate to Freud. Could. I'm just saying that these are some possibilities. But he had an attraction to the older man, and then he had a falling out with the older man that sexually assaulted him. This could be why him and Freud were not able to, but anyway, it kind of parallels their relationship. He did have, we've talked about this already, the conscious, which is the self, the unconscious, which is the personal, and the collective unconscious, which is an inherited characteristics, so we know these various areas. We know the persona. That's the side that we show to others. We have a lot of personas. There's no question about that. You go to school, you have one persona. You go to church, you have a persona. You go to a party, you put on a different face for each one of these groups. Shadows is our dark side, Anima is the female side of the male. Animus is the male side of the female. The Great Mother means nourishment. And that's basically what the Great Mother is for. And the hero is the conqueror of evil. And then he also has trickster, and that's the individual that likes to play tricks and jokes and so forth. But these are inherited. These are with us supposedly when we are born. So then ego plays a minor role in healthy individuals. Now here's a statement that he has stated, and I just thought it would be well to put down, that anyone who wants to know the human psyche will learn next to nothing from experimental psychology. In other words, we have to get out of the lab. He would be better advised to abandon exact science, put away his scholar's gowns, bid farewell to his study, and wander through the human heart throughout the world. This quote is further stated, and you can read it in the ebook under Carl Jung. This somewhat sums up Carl Jung. He was with Freud. He broke from Freud. And he was married throughout his life, but he also had girlfriends throughout his life, and he had open relationships. This is a brief sketch of Carl Jung. I hope this helps with an understanding of Carl Jung as you go through your study. Now, our next study will be with Karen Horney. We will pass Melanie Klein. We will omit that. We will not do it. So we'll go on to Karen Horney in our next study. So until then, have a good day.